morning sun shines on the gleaming hide of a muscular ranch horse. The aroma of bacon and coffee drifts from the wood cook stove at a cow camp. Silver spurs jingle as the men and women of the West get set for another day in the saddle. From the heart of Canada's finest ranching country, this is the Spirit of the West with rancher and horse trainer Hugh McLennan and his collection of music, poetry, and conversations with the folks who live and work with horses and cattle in the Spirit of the West.
Over the last 27 years that I've been fortunate enough to put this program on the air, I've had the honor of visiting with hundreds of great people of the West, from celebrities to ranch hands, and one of the many highlights was spending some time with a legendary voice of rodeo, Hadley Barrett, back in 2003. He was born September the 18th, 1929 in North Platte, Nebraska, and this ranch-raised guy started his career as a contestant and then formed his own dance band, but he found his place in rodeo history behind the microphone. A PRCA member since 1965, he was named Announcer of the Year in 83, 85, 89, and 2002. He worked 5 National Finals rodeos and the 1967 National Finals steer roping, as well as calling the action at the CFR 7 times. He was among the first to announce while on horseback and had always been credited with an honest approach to arena accidents and mishaps. Hadley Barrett passed away on March 2nd, 2017. And today we'll bring back some of the highlights of that Spirit of the West episode from January the 11th, 2004, with Hadley Barrett not only telling stories, but helping me out with some of the show.
In doing that, he would be walking right to me, that I was actually going to meet him. He would probably shake my hand, and I would hand him the microphone. And I'm not sure I could hold it still enough for him to get it at that point.
One of the few people that could imitate a guy of Hadley Barrett's stature. You'll find out who he was today as well. And Baxter Black will have a thoughtful look at what today's urban kids seem to know about agriculture.
97% of our population eats meat, yet most urban kids have no idea where it comes from.
The Rangeland News looks at a bunch of things, including
due in part to lower prices for insecticides, herbicides, and feeder cattle.
And you'll hear a piece of cowboy poetry that Hadley Barrett picked out for that program.
Up in Canada, Alberta. And he was one of the greatest bronc riders of all times and a great stock contractor.
On the Urban Saddles and Western Wear horse training file, a few riders want to know how they can keep their horse from ever spooking at anything on the trail. And Hadley Barrett did help me pick some of the music for that program, but the first song was my pick. One of Alberta's great Western voices, Fred Doberstein, and the heart of the Wanderer.
Listen to the music of the far-off wind in the pines. In the wild, lonely country where the forest brushes the sky, where the heart of the wanderer goes riding down that trail again, toward the shining mountains beyond the river's bend. Don't cry for me, say that you still care. My heart is in the wilderness with feathers in my hair, riding the high trail purifies my soul. I'll be saddled dreaming of some far off place to go. Listen to the music of the far-off wind and the pine. Each time that I leave her, a part of me is left behind. For a time I loved her, and I may love her still, but my mind kept wandering farther back into the hills. can't live in the city, so I left her far behind. She cried for me, and I know that she still cares, but the heart of the wanderer rides down that trail again. Go to the mountains and watch the seasons pass, lonely for something that I no longer have. Listen to the music of the far-off wind in the pines. Each time that I leave her, a part of me is left behind.
It was late in 2003 when I got to sit down with the legendary voice of rodeo, Hadley Barrett. And Hadley had just finished announcing the Working Cowboys Association Ranch Rodeo in Amarillo.
Great event, and we had a Canadian team there from Alberta, the Sears Ranch, and I believe that there's, I can't remember the other half of it too, but two ranches combined, and a very familiar name in rodeo, the Slosher Boys were there, and their fathers and sons, and it was a great family deal.
You know, these ranch rodeos have really done a lot, I think, for public perception of what ranching, cattle, livestock, and working cowboys are all about.
You know, I couldn't agree with you more, and you know, the old lifestyle of everybody getting together and helping brand or whatever the case may be doesn't exist as much as it did. The sophistication of the ranching world, more of them do it on their own. So I think this is one of the last remaining chances for ranches to get together, the ranch hands get to know each other, and there's always been a little competitive feel in a cowboy. I think he always felt that he could ride a ranker horse, maybe rope a bigger steer than his neighbor. And so we have a chance to do that in the ranch rodeos.
Still to come, Hadley Barrett talks about his idols, who he figures is or was the best rodeo announcer ever, and a rodeo song that's a little different but real nice to listen to, when the Spirit of the West continues right after this. Welcome back to the Spirit of the West. When legendary voice of rodeo Hadley Barrett rode across the Great Divide, he left a big hole in the hearts of thousands of folks who were lucky enough to get to know him. And this week we're rewinding to a program in 2004 when he was my guest. I think the whole approach to announcing rodeos has changed in my lifetime. I can remember watching one of my heroes, Cy Talon, years and years ago in Edmonton, and I know he probably did the national finals back when it was in Madison Square Garden. Did you have some heroes and mentors in that field that guided you along?
The very same man. The very same man. He was my hero. But I did begin announcing rodeos as a bull rider and bareback rider, and I filled in for another announcer that also competed in the bull riding and announced rodeos at some of the smaller events. That's where it all began. I don't remember listening to the announcer with the thought of learning to do what he was doing. But as soon as I did become interested, then Cy Talon was my mentor. I thought he handled the program as graciously as anyone I'd ever heard.
Who were some of the top contenders at the time you got into the business?
Well, I was following the likes of Casey Tibbs and Jim Shoulders and people like that. And Buck Rutherford, the list goes on and on and on. And I saw Jim the other day. In fact, he and I are close friends, and we see each other frequently. And you know that he is a 16-time world champion, and he's being challenged by the steer roper this year, Guy Allen, who has won 16, but could win 17, and I don't know if it's going to happen or not.
My gosh.
I saw actually Slim Pickens and Casey Tibbs pull Jim's shoulders off a bull at the Edmonton Rodeo when Cy Talon was doing the announcing.
I'm not surprised now, and that probably isn't the first time that happened. Those guys, too, were great pranksters. They, all kinds of things. I know one story about Casey Tibbs that always interested me when U-Haul trailers first came out and became popular. I guess after partying a little and coming in late at night at a motel, he and whoever he was with saw two trailers that were just exactly alike. So they very conveniently unhooked them and hooked them on the opposite cars. Now that's a terrible trick to do, but it has a little humor in it, but it has some that isn't too. But that's the kind of guys they were.
I knew a good buddy of Casey's that went up and down the road with him for years that I'm sure you've come across, Rusty Richards.
Oh, yes. Yes.
He had some great Casey stories.
Oh, he really did, and he's a great guy, too. He really was.
Well, thanks for setting that up so nicely, Hadley, because here's Rusty Richards in a song he wrote for his buddy Casey Tibbs.
His dad, he was a cowboy on the South Dakota plains. And from him, Casey learned to handle hobbles, ropes, and reins. And he learned to ride the rank ones when he was just a boy. Casey Tibbs, South Dakota cowboy. Casey Tibbs, South Dakota cowboy. At breaking broncs to saddle horses, Casey was the best. And folks began to know him in that part of the West. Till all around the country, Casey gained his fame. Till anywhere you'd care to go, folks recognize the name. Casey Tibbs, South Dakota cowboy. He was just 18 at Cheyenne when he drew the old gray mare. But when the dance was over, Casey was still there. The youngest man to win Cheyenne, and his life had just begun. He was 9 times world's champion, this South Dakota son. Casey Tibbs, South Dakota cowboy. The legend that is Casey, you can't put in a song. For to try to tell his story would take away too long. But whenever cowboys gather to talk about the gray, it won't take long, they'll soon agree and open wide the gate for Casey Tibbs, South Dakota cowboy.
Rusty Richards, fine horse trainer, fine cowboy, and of course a tenor with the Sons of the Pioneers for well over 20 years.
We had a chance to work with people like the Sons of the Pioneers and love those guys. In fact, I shared a parade marshal role with the Sons of the Pioneers and Tony Curtis about 3 years ago in Tucson, Arizona. So we had some good times down there.
Dale Warren has been the trail boss of the Sons of the Pioneers. He has been with them since 1954, I believe, and they're in their 70th year now and still sounding great.
Boy, they do. They do. They have a very unique harmony. It's been copied or imitated from time to time, and, some pretty close mocks of it, but still the Sons of the Pioneers, they have it.
That's for sure. Anything we can play for you?
Oh, well, Tumbling Tumbleweeds or Cool Water, either one works for me.
Well, as you probably know, Hadley, Tumbling Tumbleweeds was recorded several times by the Pioneers. First in 1937, and then in 1946, 1955, 1959, 1968, 1983, and then most recently in 1999. My second favorite I think, is the one from 1999 with Dale Warren and the present-day group, but I think the best arrangement and maybe the most successful one on the music charts was this version from 1946 with the voices of Bob Nolan, Tim Spencer, Lloyd Perryman, and Ken Carson.
Then tumbling down, pledging their love to the ground. Lonely but free I'll be found, drifting along with the tumbling tumbleweeds. Cares of the past are behind, nowhere to go but I'll find just where the trail will wind, drifting along with the tumbling tumbleweeds. I know when night has gone that a new world's born at dawn. I'll keep rolling along. Deep in my heart is a song. Here on the range I belong, drifting along with a tumbling tumbleweed. I know when night has gone that a new world's born at dawn. I'll keep rolling along. Deep in my heart is a song. Here on the range I belong, drifting along with the tumbling tumbleweed.
Baxter Black has a thoughtful look at city folks and animal agriculture, and will return to this flashback with the late Hadley Barrett when the Spirit of the West continues right after this.
Howdy, friends. This is Baxter Black on Spirit of the West with Hugh McLennan, and I'll be right back after this with a little peek at the animal planet.
Your land is a legacy, a challenge from those who tended it before you, to build on their foundations. At Corteva Agriscience, we understand what it means to be the stewards of a legacy. We embrace the challenge of building on the foundation of Dow AgroSciences to maintain your trust, to bring new solutions, to help you care for your land. See how we can help build your legacy at rangeandpasture.com.
And for our Canadian listeners, just check Corteva.ca, the Canadian website.
Dear Animal Planet, you have a great channel on TV. However, there is a conspicuous absence of the most indispensable animals on the planet, domestic livestock. Part of your popularity is the emphasis on human-animal bonding. You present animals, glamorous or otherwise, as creatures worthy of our esteem. But you also show death on the Serengeti. Exposing city children to the simple act of a cheetah kill is essential if they are to ever understand the order of existence on Earth. It has been a part of life since omnivores entered the food chain. So I would suggest that including related stories about domestic animals and the people who care for them would be an easy step. 97% of our population eats meat. Yet most urban kids have no idea where it comes from. Modern society has separated the ham from the burger, the chicken from the nugget, and the hot fudge sundae from the Holstein. We have sanitized our children's world so they can eat without considering the sacrifice and service that domestic animals provide to humans' well-being. For those who think that urban people are not capable of dealing with the blunt truth of animal production, I suggest that they are. From the beginning of civilization until about 50 years ago, the majority of the Earth's population was agriculturally cognizant. People learn from childhood the intricate intimacy of raising and dealing with livestock. Country kids still maintain this close natural relationship. It instills respect and a sacred responsibility towards those animals in their care who are destined for the food chain. Conversation with these country kids would open a world of understanding to an audience largely insulated from this fundamental part of their real life. When my daughter was 11 years old, we were raising rabbits. She was showing a new litter to her urban aunt. "They're so cute," said the aunt. "What will you do with them?" "Well," my daughter said, "when they're about 5 pounds, we sell them to the grocery store." Her aunt was aghast. "How can you do that?" she blurted. My 11-year-old looked up at her and said, "I don't make friends with them." Wisdom as ancient as time from the mouth of a child. It could be useful on the animal planet. This is Baxter Black on Spirit of the West with Hugh McLennan, brought to you by Corteva Agri-Science.
Just ahead of the Rangeland news, looking at the subject of rodeo as we remember Hadley Barrett. Here's Tom Cole.
You see him in the morning, just a little after sunrise. He'll saddle up and ride into the sky. Then he stops down by the lake shore where he sees that he's been looking for in the green grass that's growing stirrup high. Just a little herd of cattle grazing in the sunlight. They always dream someday on this land. He should ride home for breakfast, but maybe he won't. You never can tell, he's a rodeo man. All through the week he works on the farm. By Friday he's on the road again. With an old pickup truck that has seen its better days. Out on the rodeo trail it has no end. He's out most every day, working in the field. He's the kind of man that you can understand. He might just ride into the hills and maybe he won't. You never can tell, he's a rodeo man. All through the week he works on the farm. By Friday he's on the road again. With an old pickup truck that has seen its better days. Out on the rodeo trail it has no end. All through the week he works on the farm. By Friday he's on the road again. With an old pickup truck that has seen its better days. Out on the rodeo trail it has no end.
Now the news of the Rangeland, a roundup of news and coming events from around the West.
At the top of page 1, it says, as prices continue to rise for most farm and ranch inputs, the price most producers receive for products from soybeans to cattle has been going down significantly. And with more about that, here's Rod Bain.
A significant downward trend month over month in what livestock producers receive price-wise for their commodities contributed to an overall decline of almost 4% in USDA's Agricultural Commodity Price Index for September. The 6.9% decrease in the livestock price index was caused by meat, animal, and poultry and egg producers receiving over 9% less price-wise for their commodities compared to the previous month. This offset an over 2% increase in the price index for dairy. On the crop price side, month over month, that index reported a 0.8% decrease. Increases in what wheat, fruit, and tree nut and hay growers received price-wise was countered by lower prices for producers in September for corn, soybean, and vegetable crops. Producers, meanwhile, paid 0.5% less in prices for inputs and services in September, due in part to lower prices for insecticides, herbicides, and feeder cattle. I'm Rod Bain reporting for the U.S. Department of Agriculture in Washington, D.C.
Further limits to antimicrobials sold to livestock producers could be coming in the United States. Veterinary prescriptions for certain injectable products and boluses available over the counter could be required. In 2017, the FDA required veterinary prescriptions for medically important antibiotics also used to treat human diseases. And about 100 approved products are still available and are delivered by other means than feed and water, and these will make a small portion of what is actually used, and a 2-year phase-in period would be allowed once the government guidance is published, according to the Center for Veterinary Medicine at the FDA. Cattle, horses, and swine, they say, would most be affected. 2 South Dakota senators have introduced a bill to amend the Federal Meat Inspection Act to modify requirements that meat is labeled Product of USA. The bill must pass the Senate before it can move on to the House and President before potentially becoming law. A separate but related bill was also introduced on October 31st in hopes of reestablishing a country of origin labeling cool type program. That resolution puts forth a firm statement in support of cool, which was repealed in 2015. The Bureau of Land Management has announced that it has reached a significant milestone by placing 7,104 wild horses and burros into private homes nationwide during fiscal year 2019, which ended at the end of last month. Now, this is the highest number of adoptions and sales the agency has seen over the last 15 years and represents a 54% increase, nearly 2,500 animals over the previous year's total of 4,609. November the 18th, it's the regular cattle sale at the Kamloops yards of the BC Livestock Co-op, and then November 21st, a calf and regular sale in Williams Lake, and then a bred cow and bred heifer sale in Williams Lake November 22nd. That's in Vanderhoof. You can get all the information and watch the sale streaming at bclivestock.bce.ca. Meanwhile, out at the Innisfail Auction Market, fine operation owned and run by the Danes family for a long time. Things are really busy with pre-sort sales on Mondays, regular sales every Wednesday and Friday, November 22nd, a bred cow and bred heifer sale, and Saturday, November 23rd, it's their next horse sale. Get the details at InnisfailAuctionMarket.com. Okay, down to the time for the final item again. And none of these I thought are good enough to make the cut by themselves. So we'll share all 3 of them. From the great horseman and cowboy Miles Kingdon, some of you have never been chased by an aggressive rooster, and it shows. And this one from a source that remains nameless, I accidentally rubbed ketchup into my eyes, and now I have Heinz sight. And you might guess who this one's from. A ranch manager says, "Why do I always have to come looking for you when there's work to do?" And the answer is, because you and I both know that these days a good cowboy is hard to find. And that's the Rangeland News. Coming up in the Urban Saddles and Western Wear Horse Training File, is there a way to prevent your horse from ever spooking out on the trail? And more great memories of Hadley Barrett when the Spirit of the West continues right after this. Welcome back to the Spirit of the West, and we'll bring you more of that memorable program from 2004 with the legendary Hadley Barrett, and the Urban Saddles and Western Wear Horse Training File is coming right up. But first, here is the latest on the next Spirit of the West cruise. We are calling this The Spirit of the West Brings It Home. And as I said last week, this will be our 19th annual, and after that many years, Billy and I will be stepping back from hosting cruises after this one. So we really want to make it memorable and as uncomplicated as possible. So here's how we plan to do things. Folks from Alberta, Saskatchewan, and beyond, and in the U.S. will probably fly to Kelowna, BC on July 15th, overnighting there in a beautiful hotel, and then board the coaches for a trip up to the McLennan Ranch, our little place above Kamloops. And you'll be treated to a live show with the amazing Western Spirit Band, along with special guest Lewis the Big Rig McIver, who of course gave me one of his kidneys. And after the visit to our place, the coaches will take you to beautiful Sun Peaks, where you can ride the chairlift, see the mountain wildflowers, and see the place where cattle still graze and have done so in the summers for over 100 years. After overnighting there, the coaches head to Vancouver. You overnight then, and in the next morning, board the beautiful Holland America Koningsdam for a 7-day trip up the Inside Passage to Alaska and back. You don't fly back, you ride the ship back. And we'll have lots of special events for our cruise group, including one of our favorite trips, the White Pass Railroad. We sure hope you can join Billy and I on our farewell cruise, and for all the information, you can see the cruise page at hugh-mclennan.com and call 1-800-530-0131.
Now it's time for the Horse Training File, brought to you by Irvine Tack and Western Wear, Canada's largest Western store.
Okay, you know that Irvin's is all about Western wear with a welcome twist. But Irvin Tack and Western Wear is also famous for their home decor with a Western twist. Beautiful rustic dining room and kitchen tables, wooden chests and drawers, bedroom furniture, wall decor, and more. So stop in soon, take your time, and explore Irvin's Western home decor. Something special for every room and every nook and cranny. Exit 305 off Highway 2 by Crossfield.
Canada's largest Western store.
Got emails from a couple of riders this week saying their biggest worry out on a trail ride is having their horse spook. How can they train him not to spook at anything? Well, my thoughts on that are that you really can't, and you may not want to stop him from ever spooking again. A horse that's alert and hasn't had the life drilled out of him is a pleasure to ride, but inevitably, with the best of them, the survival instinct will kick in sometimes when a deer, coyote, or even a calf comes busting out of the bush across the trail. A calf or a cow running up unexpectedly from behind can spook a lot of horses, but usually only until the horse can turn and identify what the critter is. Now, I think if you can ride with confidence and be alert enough to see the surroundings the way your horse sees them, that's about the most you can do. I actually had my heart rate go up when I seen something in the bush that looked like a bear, but it was really only a dark stump. And my horse didn't react until he felt my anxiety. But now I know how he feels. Now, as long as the horse I'm riding sees me as a confident leader, I think we'll be okay. One thing I do avoid, though, is that, say there's a spooky object, alive or inanimate, that really has him concerned. I won't let him stop and stare at it with his head up and his ears ahead. That means his full attention is riveted to whatever he's afraid of, and I'll do whatever it takes to get his attention back on me and do whatever I can to move his feet. Now, most of the time when I feel him tensing up and I see the object that's bothering him up ahead, I'll try to calmly but assertively ride on past it without making a big deal. And as we go by, his ear and eye closest to the spooky object will be on them, but I'll make sure that I have his attention with the other ear and the other eye. And something else I'll do often as I pay attention to his ears, and I think that's important. Every time he checks in with me by flicking an ear back, I'll try and acknowledge it with a little rub on his neck at the same time as that ear flicks back. And that shows him that I'm tuned into him all the time. And for Irvin Saddles and Western Wear, that's the Horse Training File. Something else that I know really helps our horses stay in good shape, even the real old ones, is that daily feeding of Hoffman's Horse Ration. And you can find out all about it at hoffmanshorseration.com. And now back to that program from January of 2004.
Hadley Barrett,
well-known rancher and award-winning rodeo announcer, is visiting today. And Hadley, you were telling me that you actually were with President George Bush not long ago.
Oh, you know, that was scary to me. I was born and raised on a Sandhill ranch in Nebraska. And in fact, I still have a ranch in Nebraska. And to think that I actually went that far without any intentions of doing exactly that, I was called on, I was called on to close this presidential rodeo. And in the process, I was to introduce the president onto the arena floor to close the show. And not even realizing until I was just seconds away from it that in doing that, he would be walking right to me, that I was actually going to meet him. He would probably shake my hand, and I would hand him the microphone. And I'm not sure I could hold it still enough for him to get it at that point. But that's a long way from a Sandhill ranch to the middle of Washington, D.C.
In your long and successful rodeo career, there must have been a lot of events that you'd regard as real significant ones.
Well, you know, there are things that stand out in your mind that are not really good memories. Like I was announcing the rodeo in Cheyenne when Lane Frost was killed. And I've had the misfortune of being involved in several of those serious type accidents. But on a much brighter side, you know, you see things that look like the worst wrecks in the world that turn out well. And you know the humor of a cowboy is that at a Brandon, if somebody gets tripped by a rope and lands upside down in a stock tank, if he isn't hurt, that's absolutely the funniest thing to the entire crew. And we have that day after day with rodeo. So if you have a bad deal, like you rip the leg out of your britches and you're out in front of 20,000 people and trying to hold your hat over whatever to get back to the chutes, the toughest part is meeting your compadres when you get back there because they're all slapping their leg.
Hadley, you know, my wife Billy's dad was actually born and raised in Nebraska. And here's another Nebraska native son who wrote a lot of great cowboy songs, Joe Babcock, with one just for you.
Back in the days of Buffalo Bill, my forefathers stood on Happy Jack Hill, led by the Spirit and the good Lord's will to Nebraska. They gathered by the river, sang a gospel song. The journey they had taken had been hard and long, but they thanked the Lord for leading them on to Nebraska. They built a little town on the broad prairie, suffered through drought and misery. Through it all, they were happy to be in Nebraska. And that's the place where I was born, land of the flat water, cattle and corn, where the grass is green and the sun is warm in Nebraska. Memories of my boyhood days, hiking those hills where I stood to gaze at the North Loop River as it winds its way through Nebraska. Land of the Platte and the proud Pawnee, where the grass still looks like a waving sea that covers the hills that are home to me in Nebraska. Sometimes at night the rustling of the leaves that move with the wind through the cottonwood trees sang a little lullaby for me in Nebraska. No matter how far I ramble and roam, no matter how many addresses I've known, my heart will always have a home in Nebraska. So when it comes my time to go and I leave this place that I love so, I'll be leaving part of my soul here in Nebraska. From the bluffs of Omaha to Chimney Rock, Conestoga wagons with the canvas tops were home to the pioneers that chose to stop in Nebraska. History was made on the Oregon Trail, and the coyote let out a mournful wail when he saw the coming of the long steel rail in Nebraska. But the place that is so dear to me is the North Loop River that runs so free, and that little town that was good to me in Nebraska.
Coming right up, a special piece of cowboy poetry selected by my guest Hadley Barrett when the Spirit of the West continues right after this. Welcome back to the Spirit of the West. Looking back on this visit with the late Hadley Barrett, the legendary voice of rodeo, this is another song that was featured in that program from 2004 from Wyoming cowboy singer Tom Hyatt.
Even as she sleeps, she feels his restless turning. She struggles with an old dream all night long. When she awakes, she turns to reassure him. She whispers to the shadows and finds him gone. Way out in the barn, a single lamp is burning. She faintly hears the radio play a sad old cowboy song. Watches as he works with his rigging and his saddle. A sudden chill runs through her in the cold of the not quite dawn. She's losing him to that rodeo wind that blows through his soul when the summer begins. When the winter snows fall, he'll come back again, but his heart always drifts on that rodeo wind. One sure way to lose him is to try and make him stay. Well, he can't explain, don't even know himself. But the force that drew her to him, now it's just gotta break away. The sound of the road and the rolling wheels are the only things that help. She's losing him to that rodeo wind that blows through his soul when the summer begins. When the winter snows fall, he'll come back again, but his heart always drifts on that rodeo wind. Now it all makes sense, those signs she's been seeing all along. She feels like such a fool, 'cause a woman ought to know. The other day she saw him sitting out on the south fence, tossing stones at prairie dogs and staring down the road. She's losing him to that rodeo wind that blows through his soul when the summer begins. When the winter snows fall, he'll come back again, but his heart always drifts on that rodeo wind. When the winter snows fall, he'll come back again, but his heart always drifts on that rodeo wind.
And now, here's the final segment of that program from 2004. Welcome back to the Spirit of the West. Nebraska rancher and very popular rodeo voice Hadley Barrett is going to help me pick out a fitting selection to wrap up this gather. But first, we talked about the great Casey Tibbs and played Rusty Richards' tribute called South Dakota Cowboy. Now here's another fine tribute to that bronc riding legend from Ian Tyson.
The Fort is in South Dakota, America's young and free. John Tibbs raised up 10 children, one turned out to be the wildest young bronc fighter who ever bucked down the line. But just 19 when he won the world in 1949. Yeah, Casey, he was different, like the great ones always are. They marched to a different drummer, they follow a different star. From the Bronx and the chutes to the downtown ladies, everybody knew it was 4th of July with the big blue sky. Casey was coming through. And the chaps were purple, the Cadillac was purple, the sky was 1950 blue. Green was the color of the greenback dollar. He rode them broncs with a hoop and a horn. Casey, the Rainbow Rider. Never be another you. To California, down San Diego way. Gonna sing this song for Casey, just to see what he has to say. Look at pictures of a wild bunch hanging on the wall. I'm the #1 fan of the Rainbow Man, the wildest of them all. And the shots were purple, the Cadillac was purple, the sky was 1950 blue. Green was the color of the greenback dollar. He rode them broncs with a hoop and a horn. Casey, the Rainbow Rider. There'll never be another like you. Shots were purple, the Cadillac was purple, the sky was 1950 blue. Green was the color of the greenback dollar. He rode them broncs with a hoop and a horn. Casey, the Rainbow Rider. Never be another like you.
Well, there's kind of a combination of great ones. Ian Tyson singing about the great Casey Tibbs. Now, Hadley, we've heard from Rusty Richards, Ian Tyson, the Sons of the Pioneers, Joe Babcock, and Fred Doberstein on this program. And is there somebody else or anybody else that you'd like to have featured here?
If you find something by Red Steagall, you'll always touch my heart a little with that, too.
All right. I can kind of think of one right now that he wrote. It was inspired by Herman Linder, who I'm sure you know as well, called He Preferred Bucking Horses to Books.
That's right. I love that, too.
All right. And, you know, I just well remember when I was a kid in the front row, when Cy Talon was the announcer, Casey Tibbs, Jim Shoulders, Deb Copenhaver, Bill Linderman, Bud Van Cleve, Bob Deuce, Cliff Vandergrift, oh, who else? Wilf Gerlitz, Rocky Rockabar, so many other great cowboys competed at what they called the Edmonton Rodeo Champions. Rex Allen and Coco were the contract act, and the arena director who put it all together was Herman Linder, who rode across the Great Divide not long ago. And with your tribute to Herman Linder, here's our mutual friend, Red Steagall.
I was talking to a friend of mine named Herman Linger up in Canada, Alberta. He was one of the greatest bronc riders of all times and a great stock contractor. And he was showing me a scrapbook, and one of the headlines said, "Cowboy prefers bucking horses to books." That's the title of this poem. I seen him last spring at the sale barn in town. He was setting in his favorite place. Must have been 80, at least he looked like he was if you counted the lines in his face. In spirit, he must have been 20 years old. As a twister, he is still tough to beat. The wilder the better, don't make him no mind. He could ride anything on 4 feet. Now, when he was a youngster, they'd take him to school and he'd wait till his folks drove away. He'd go out to some ranch and hire out breaking colts for beans and a dry place to stay. Then, when he got older, he rode saddle broncs, beat 'em all from Fort Worth to Cheyenne. I've seen other guys point him out to their sons. Now, boys, there's a hell of a hand. He said reading books was a waste of his time. Breaking horses was twice as much fun. He had a good eye for a colt that'd work and never lost money on one. He was proud of his colts, and if you disagreed, he'd tell you to go straight to hell. He'd make you believe a bell mare was a filly, then sell you the mare and the bell. His first love was horses, the second his wife, and though she was a long ways behind, when he'd leave her for weeks out running wild horses, she acted like she didn't mind. His lessons were learned from the code of the West, like helping a friend when he's broke. Was true to his word, his convictions were strong, was dry, but he loved a good joke. Now, he weren't antisocial, just stayed to himself, was uneasy with people around. He'd come in on sale day to buy or sell colts. That's all that he needed in town. The 4th of July, he was on a green bronc, was prowling the pasture at dawn. The colt come to headquarters dragging his reins. We found him. He is already gone. Now, Lord, here's a cowboy who knows right from wrong. He lived by your word every day, knew the Bible by heart, never learned how to read. He'd take off his hat when he'd pray. Education don't have to be gotten in school, and don't judge a man by his looks. His story unfolds in the line on his stone. He preferred bucking horses to books.
Thanks again for riding along, and we will be back to do it all over again next week at the same time, and I hope you can join us then. As always, thanks to the Spirit of the West support crew. That would be Mark and Kathy McMillan. And if you're looking for tractor parts, any make, any year, Mark can help you. See his page, bctractorparts.com. And you know, there's some really valuable information on cattle handling in the latest issue of Canadian Cowboy Country Magazine. Subscribe online at cowboycountrymagazine.com. And have you had a chance to look at the YouTube version of this program? Well, you can do that or get it as a podcast. The links are found on our website, hugh-mclennan.com. And all of our past programs are available, at least most of them, on YouTube and Facebook. Anyway, till next week, I'm Hugh McLennan. Hope to see you down the trail somewhere real soon.